port in northern Israel. And the sea is awesome. This easternmost Mediterranean coast. And it is the unity of these peoples, including the Philistines, who were Mycenaean Greeks, and who gave their name to the Palestinians. So I'm just saying, as a philosopher, we have to get healing between all these people. We have to get peace between the Palestinians, the Israelis, the Lebanese, and all their sub-varieties and subtexts. They're all waves in the one great sea of the divine beauty. Right, I want to do something else which is fun. Some of you know I'm a linguist. I think that may be obvious from my talks. I'm a philosopher of language. And one of the things I've done is I've said we need to invent new words for the future. It's not enough to go on using the same old words. We have to think new thoughts, and they need new words. And so I produced a dictionary of new words for a global peace civilization. And I'm just going to read one, more or less at random. And this is simply the word joyism. That's what's come up. Some of you, my close friends, know I use this word. It's a technical term I've coined. It's the opposite of terrorism. Terrorism does terrible deeds, blowing up, in order to get theoretically good ends. It was invented in the 19th century by anarchists in Russia and so on, who were bombing the Tsar to try and say, we want to free Russia, so let's bomb the Tsar. Of course, it always has the opposite effect. The Jews used it against the British when they wanted their free Palestine, free Israel, so they bombed the British at the King David Hotel. We'll kill the Brits till we get free Israel. And it has an opposite effect. It made the kind of Israel that emerged out of that chaos not such a pleasant place. Certainly not for Palestinian Arabs or Christians. And it was used tragically in Sarajevo. I just watched a very good documentary film about the Black Hand who killed the Archduke Ferdinand and his wife and launched the horrors of World War One. It was a terrorist attack. They thought, I know what we'll do, we'll kill the Archduke and that'll make everyone, give independence to Serbians in Bosnia. I mean, it had the complete opposite effect. It led to the invasion of Serbia by the Austro-Hungarian army, the rallying to defence by the Russian army, and then World War I breaks out in a nightmare of conflict. So it was launched by that trigger was the terrorist attack. So look, hey, terrorism, bad idea, seriously bad idea. So what do we do as philosophers? Well, we have to coin something else that can, if there's any good in the concept of terrorism, let's keep that, but chuck out all the bad stuff. So I've coined the word joyism, which is you do acts for a given political end, like equality, justice, peace, whatever, but you do it in a joyous way. So you have dancings, you have spontaneous sudden outbursts of dancing, you have sudden spontaneous outbursts of flower displays or fireworks or painting a bleak wall of a council estate with beautiful designs and patterns. You might have deeply moving erotic manifestations, love pageants, revelations of beauty and interconnectedness, etc., etc. There's a paragraph describing what joyism is. And I'm a joyist, I'm not a terrorist. I believe in joyful action. Joyism is premised on the free flow of truth, the free flow of spiritual and scientific knowledge both, the right to criticize regimes, the right to say the truth about dictatorships, and the right to speak up against corruption in high places. So joyism is not about hedonism, it's not about, being myopic and asleep with drunkenness and hedonism in the face of evil. On the contrary, it's laser sharp joyism exposes these false hedonists, these Boris Johnsons and his many mistresses and his lies and that whole cabal that have created Brexit. I mean, Joyism is for happiness collectively, for the common people, as well as, elites. And so it's a collaborative experience that joyists can work on together, whatever social class. You can be a king, a monarch, right down to a road sweeper or a homeless, landless peasant. Joyism is what combines our common humanity, as Marx said, in our species essence. I wish joy to you, you wish it back to me. What's the loss? Nothing's lost. My way of giving joy is to tell the truth as a philosopher and intellectual. And to, for example, on the COVID thing, I see so much suffering, so much pain, so many people losing loved ones, so much tragedy, that my joy is to find out the truth about what's caused it. And I won't let that go until we find it out. That's my Satyagraha pledge to you as an intellectual. Okay, that's Joyism. That's my word of the day. And I think that's quite a cool book, actually. If you haven't got your copy, you need to get one, really. Now I want to share a sad but important anniversary. Today, the 2nd of May, in 1519, just up the road in Amboise, there took place the death of Leonardo da Vinci, who is, as you know, one of my favourite intellectuals, artists and philosophers. The King of France, Francois I, had invited him to become court painter, and in 1516 he'd installed him in this house, which is now a manor house, made into a museum, just near Amboise Castle. And a couple of years ago we had a conference in his honour here. And then I went with a colleague up to Amboise and we looked around Chateau Luce, and we've seen the bed in which he died on this day. There's a painting. Apparently he died in the arms of the king, who loved him very much. He was a wise king, Francois I. He was like Henry VIII, but without the bad bits. He brought the Renaissance to France, but wasn't a kind of idiot egotist who then destroyed, the whole sort of consensus on religion. Francois, as Leonardo was dying, he was crying, and Francois said, why are you crying? He'd just taken communion. He was expecting, as a good Catholic, person of faith, an esoteric Catholic in the universal tradition that I would consider myself also in. The word Catholic means a universalist. This dear, good universalist, Leonardo da Vinci, who was a polymath and a master of many sciences and arts, including mathematics, was crying, and the king said, why? And Leonardo said, oh Lord King, I'm dying, and yet there's still so much work to do. I've left so much work unfinished, uncompleted. And he was crying as he went to meet his maker. Now that to me is a good way to die. It's a good life. To admit nobody can do everything that we would like, but it's better to have bigger dreams and only to realise a few of them than to have no dreams at all and just do one thing again and again and again. We are Renaissance people ever since Leonardo, and we should honour his death this day and the work that he's left us to finish, which is immense. Now, I realised at the time of our conference, you see, Leonardo made great weapons of war. He was commissioned by the Borgias. Before he got his lovely commission with the King of France, he had to work for the Borgias, Cesare Borgia, and the Sforza dynasty in Milan. And these were all warlords that wanted one thing from him only, mainly, which is improve my army's efficiency, make my cannon bigger and more powerful. He invented machine guns, helicopters, gunships, tanks, underwater amphibious operation machines, submarines, He was a polymath he had to be for a living. But he lamented all this, he wanted to be an artist painting beautiful Mona Lisas for peace, using eros for joyism to make peace. But the times wouldn't let him, So, and they still won't. And so my lament, and what this homage to him that we organised a few years ago brought out is that we need to set up a Leonardo da Vinci Peace Prize. And we've initiated that. It will be presented in Aubras at Clos Luce, hopefully by the President of France. And what it will be is the best design of a Nonagon. What's a Nonagon? Okay, it's a 9-sided building to go on the top of the Pentagon building. The Pentagon is the single biggest money spinner in the world's history for instruments and weapons of war. Now, it's called defence, but actually, like, who's going to attack America? I mean, they've spent enough on defence. What they ought to be spending their money on now is peace, with all due respect, and making friendships around the world with countries that think they're evil. Biden is clever enough to realise the best form of defence for America now is friendship. And I think I told you last week I was at a senior conference of intelligence leaders from America saying that, we need to stop demonising, making enemies everywhere. We need to realise that mankind's facing a common threat of global warming, and that's for real, and let's get on with it. And there are other common threats, not just weather related, but the pandemic and where it's come from, and how can we stop it happening again? So anyway, the Department of Peace, housed in the Nonagon on the top of the Pentagon symbolically, was the vision that came to me communing with Leonardo da Vinci's grave. And bless him, I honour his memory and his work, and to me that is the work he's left us to do. It's still not been done. And until that's happened, I'm going to carry on crying. And if I die without having achieved the Nonagon and the 20, other major projects my institute's working on, I will also shed tears. But, please help me finish them. So anyone with architectural skills, architectural drawing, expertise in the idea of a peace prize for Leonardo da Vinci, then please get in touch. Now I want to share something else. Once I went to a brilliant exhibition at a specialist library in Dublin, which is one of the great libraries of the world. It has very, very ancient texts and manuscripts. It has the oldest text of St. Paul that survived in I think it's on papyrus, just a little fragment from one of Paul's letters. The Chester Beatty Library, it's called. If you're in Dublin, it's a treasure trove. They once organised a brilliant exhibition on Leonardo da Vinci because they borrowed on loan a manuscript that's owned, I think, by Bill Gates, which is one of his wonderful notebooks full of little drawings and things. And they did a lot of research for the exhibition and discovered that Leonardo was a great expert on the history of science and maths, surprise, surprise, and had in his library many Muslim books, many Islamic scientists and astronomers and, technical drawing experts and so on, as well as Vesalius and other Renaissance Italians, because a lot of the great science of the Islamic world helped spur the Renaissance in Italy. And this was evidenced in this exhibition, which had fantastic actual, original copies of Islamic manuscripts which are housed in the collection, or they borrowed from elsewhere. So, and some of you know I'm doing Ramadan in solidarity with my Muslim friends, and as a Sufi, I think Leonardo was probably a kind of a Sufi as well. And Ramadan simply means you don't eat between, sunrise and sunset. And it's very good actually to have that focused time for reflection on spiritual truths. And the other thing I'm finding about Ramadan, which I'm really enjoying, is because you're allowed to eat after sunset, each day you really want to look at when sunset's due, and you look at the clock and you count the minutes down, and you might want to prepare something so you can launch into it the minute sunset's happening. And of course, because we're now in May and it's coming up, the solstice is gone, and we're coming up to the Midsummer Solstice. So the days are getting longer and longer. So each night, it takes a little longer for the sun to go down. And it puts you very much in touch with the movements of the sun and the earth and the moon, because the fast of Ramadan ends at the next new moon. We've just had the full moon, so now in the countdown to, I think it's the 11th of May, when the next new moon comes, and then that's the end of the month, and we can have a big feast, big party, Eid, and everywhere, all over the world, millions of Muslims who are fasting for Ramadan, like me, we can come out of it and go back to sort of normal for until next year. Well, what's so interesting about the experience is it really plugs you into the solar calendar and the lunar calendar. It puts you in unity with the heavens in a way that I don't experience with, say, the Christian feasts of Easter and so on, which, I mean, they're lovely and I do them, but you don't get that whole month long of being plugged into the cosmic synergies. And so, for instance, there's a wonderful verse in the section I've been doing. I just want to share. I've been working on Surah 37. I'm going through my commentary of the Quran chronologically, and it's an honour to be able to do this. This is an awesome book, and it has 99% really amazing bits, and I'm saying so and explaining why. It does have the odd bit that I think was channeled on a lesser day. I think Muhammad had the odd off day, or the committee that later put these into some kind of order maybe sneaked in bits that maybe Muhammad didn't say. We don't know. Critical scholarship on the Quran is still in its early phases. I'm being audacious in doing this work, but I'm sort of like Spinoza, who did the same for the Bible. He said, this Bible thing, it's not actually by Moses directly, because X, Y, Z. And Abelard had said the same thing in his book, Yes and No. And critical biblical scholarship took centuries to really get underway until in the 18th and 19th centuries. Finally, serious attention was paid to the form criticism of biblical passages, and people realised it was a composite, layered thing, and that it wasn't just one text written by Moses. That work is still in its infancy in terms of the Quranic studies, and I'm trying to contribute to that by putting my commentary in chronological sequence. Now, does that make me a heretic? No, it makes me a genuinely, deeply devoted Sufi who wants the truth about the Quran. It makes me want, I love God so much, I want the actual truth, not the one I'm supposed to buy off a package. I want the truth that, Gurdjieff was after, or Rumi, or Fritjof Schuon, or, all the great sages and saints of Islamic philosophy, Ibn Arabi, Ibn Kamal, the great Turkish sheikh of the Ottomans. These are the people standing behind me as I'm doing my commentary. I'm drawing on their insights. Okay, so you can listen to the commentary. It's on Global Green University, and it will hopefully one day be written up in both Arabic and English, and Persian and Turkish. But having said all that, I'm just a humble little servant of truth. Here's the surah I've been working on. Saffat, those ranged in ranks, number 37. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. By those who range themselves in ranks, and so are strong in repelling evil, and thus proclaim the message of God. Verily, verily, your God is one, Lord of the heavens and of the earth, and all between them, and Lord of every point at the rising of the sun. We have indeed decked the lower heaven with beauty and the stars, for beauty, and for guard against all obstinate, rebellious, evil spirits, so they should not strain their ears in the direction of the exalted assembly. Now that, my friends, is the opening of this extraordinary surah, number 37, which is towards the very end of Muhammad's stay in Mecca. It's just as he's beginning to think, time to go to Medina, folks, and do the Hijrah. What I love about that opening is the music of the language, the music of the rhythms of the images. My Druid friends are very, concerned to work out the angle, the point at which the sun rises. And they love to measure up at Stonehenge and Avebury the exact stone over which it's peaking, at what time, and so on and so on. The Quran is almost like addressing them. I call them the alignment fanatics, the sort of geomancers of rocks. The Lord of the Quran is the Lord of every point at the rising of the sun. When you're there at Stonehenge and the sun comes up, suddenly the whole of Stonehenge is flooded with light. It's the most beautiful experience. The people in that dawn moment bathed in golden glow, and the whole landscape of Wiltshire is suddenly flooded with this glorious light, and every stone, Why? Because God is graciously exuberant in sharing beauty. And so God is the Lord of every point. You can't narrow God down to one set of alignments. It's a trans-dimensional fecundity that is God. I associate the God of the Quran, Allah, with Apollo and with Luke. It was revealed to me in a dream once that Apollo and Allah ultimately trace back to the same deity. The Lord of healing, the Lord of medicine, of exact science, of mathematics, of philosophy, of purification, and of prophecy. These are all qualities of Apollo, and they're also all qualities of Allah. The beauty of the prophecy is a sign of Apollo being, in the project. But anyway, I leave it to you to judge. And what is also beautiful about this opening sequence is that it's beauty that is the guard against evil. You see, one of the great proofs for the existence of God, if you want, is the aesthetic proof. Because the world is beautiful, there has to be a divine creator who is aesthetically charged with creating this world and all the things and wonderful things in it. And that's why the artist, the poet, the musician, is a faithful priest or priestess of the Lord of Beauty. And this is what every true Sufi Muslim philosopher, academic also knows. And this is what is in Plato. Plato's texts are very much in the tradition of Apollo, the Lord of creation, of beauty. And so Aristotle knew that. That's why he went off and discovered or invented poetics. But evil cannot come near it. Evil is disharmony, chaos. Evil is pain, suffering, all the destructive stuff. It can't even get near what I'm talking about. It won't understand the exalted assembly, which is later explained in this surah as you can call it the hierarchy of invisible spirits who've ascended, the ascended masters, the Mahatmas, the invisible hierarchy, Alice Bailey calls it. They're all terms the Sufis talk about. This same concept, the kutub, the pole around which the sages revolve. That they're there because of beauty, and it's a moral beauty as well as a love of physical beauty. Socrates is there, all the rest. And if you look at the Ikhwan Saffat, the great brotherhood of purity, which commented on the Quran in its epistles early on, not long after Muhammad's demise, they were commenting in the same way I'm doing, universally, from the Hermetic, the Christian, the Jewish, all the different traditions of mankind, including as far as India. I'm doing the same, just updating it. But anyway, those who understand what I'm talking about will understand. And do read Surah 37 and listen to my commentary on it. So now I want to move on, and I've been working on another text I want to share, which I think is very interesting and deserves to be better known. And this is a book by D.H. Lawrence, a writer I greatly love for his poetry, his novels, and for this extraordinary book called The Apocalypse, which is his commentary on the apocalypse of St. John the Divine. And if we aren't living through apocalyptic times, I don't know when we will be. And dear old D.H. Lawrence has got there first. He's done the commentary. And it's absolutely stupendous. If you don't know this book, you can get it in a Penguin edition. Absolutely worth getting. And he's full of surprising scholarship. D.H. Lawrence isn't known for his religious studies, but I think secretly he was really interested in ferreting out esoteric traditions. I mean, we all know about Robert Graves' interest in all that, but I think D.H. Lawrence would have run him a close second at a debate. Maybe D.H. Lawrence should have become Oxford Professor of Poetics. So, I can only read a little snippet to give you a flavour. The twins belong to a very old cult, which apparently was common to all ancient European peoples. But it seems they were heavenly twins belonging to the sky. Yet, when they were identified by the Greeks with the Tyndarids, Castrum Polydeuces, already in the Odyssey, they lived alternatively in heaven and in Hades, witnessing to both places. And as such, they may be the candlesticks or stars of heaven on the one hand, and the olive trees of the underworld on the other. But the older a myth, the deeper it goes in the human consciousness, the more varied will be the forms it takes in the upper consciousness. We have to remember that some symbols, and this of the twins is one of them, can carry even our modern consciousness back for 1,000 years, for 2,000 years, for 3,000 years, for 4,000 years, and even beyond that. The power of suggestion is most mysterious. It may not work at all, or it may carry the unconscious mind back in great cyclic swoops through eras of time, or it may go only part way. You know, a snippet, but he's pointing there to what I call transpersonal history. What are the laws that govern mythology and how it surfaces in different cultures at different times, seemingly out of nowhere, but out of the collective unconscious, and out of rivers and currents and traditions that would have been picked up by priests and wandering sages and druids in different generations, you know. Why is the myths in the books of Enoch about the fallen angels so similar to the Promethean myth in Greece, not that far away, around about the same time, of a sort of angelic, demonic force whose falls out with the official gods in order to bring knowledge to humanity, in his case fire. Well, that's what the Book of Enoch says. These watchers falling to earth did. They brought knowledge to mankind, and for that they were really castigated by a very angry God of the heavens, El, who really resented it. Well, hang on, isn't that the same myth? Isn't Prometheus and the Book of Enoch talking about the same thing? So, you know, there's just one tiny example that D.H. Lawrence, I mean, I don't know that D.H. Lawrence read the books of Enoch. I'd love to see his commentaries on them. I did a commentary on the 3 books of Enoch. I wish D.H. Lawrence had done his. I mean, for all I know, he did. It's in manuscript somewhere. If you know of it, let me know. I know he did a commentary on the Gospels, and he has Mary Magdalene as a priestess of Isis, reviving the nearly dead Christ. I mean, it's the most marvellous piece of writing. And maybe in the next Mary Magdalene Studies Journal we should put the excerpts in. yeah, hats off to you, D.H. Lawrence, and thank you for doing what you did. And shame you didn't live long enough to do the books of Enoch. But some of us are carrying on in your wake as little poets and scholars. And that leads me to the May elections that are coming up. You know, the Tory criminal cabal that seized my country is doing absolutely everything against common sense, decency, fair play, honour and integrity. The Johnson cabinet en masse should resign. What Priti Patel has done, what Johnson has done, what Dominic Cummings was doing, all these people are ignorant, to put it mildly, evil, to put it more strongly. And I hope that the good people of Nottingham, where D.H. Lawrence came from, and where I taught for 2 years, and all the other Labour voters will come back to the fold and just reject these Tories at the ballot box. They need to be ousted. And you know, I think only 3 people should vote Tory at this coming election. And they're only doing so because they've got Alzheimer's and don't have a television and don't know what's been going on. And in Scotland, I hope that the SNP and the independence movement sweep the board. I hope not a single Tory is elected in Scotland. They don't deserve it. And I hope the Lib Dems, you know, hang on. They deserve their voice of common sense and reason. And the Greens and Plaid Cymru in Wales. You know, anyone that isn't a Tory, please vote for them. And vote strategically in your region. Whoever stands the most chance of defeating the Tories. They don't deserve the name Tory. Tory was a decent name. It was someone that supported the Irish in their struggles against Cromwell and the madness of that conquest. These aren't proper Tories. They're a fake. They're like, you know, demonic forces that have been parachuted in from some other planet. Anyway, so good luck. May the people of Britain rise up. This is our chance at revolution, guys. It's called democracy. I want to come to a close. The other thing that I promised to mention from the World Intellectual Forum was the International Delphic Games. Now, this is a brilliant project. We heard from its Secretary General, a wonderful man called Christian Kirsch, who lives in Berlin. He's been carrying the torch for this project for a long time. I reached out to him recently after having lost contact with them. I was first told about them by my friend Dr. Carl Shapley, who was the son of Harlow Shapley, the astronomer in Harvard at the time of Roosevelt, and who helped put the S into UNESCO, Carl told me, and was a good friend of Einstein and many of the great scientists of the day. And Carl was his wonderful son, a very colourful chap, who set up a thing called the New World Academy. He made me vice rector of it. I still am, I suppose. And he wanted to bring the intellectuals of the world, the academics, together to do visionary stuff. Well, I think, you know, we're still trying to do that, Carl. And one of the things he did was go to a conference launching or helping launch the revived International Delphic Games, which took place in St. Petersburg in '94. Now, you may not know this, but in ancient Greece, which, as you know, I'm a devotee of as a philosopher, there were very important things called the Olympic Games took place for the sportsmen, the javelin athletes, the runners, the jumpers, and so on. And they took place every 5 years, but every 4 years also, 1 year before the Olympic Games, took place the Delphic Games. So they kind of staggered. And the Delphic Games celebrated everything the Olympic Games didn't. They took place at Delphi. They celebrated culture and the arts, music, dance, the prophetic arts, the handicrafts, you know. All that Greece loved about art and aesthetics was celebrated here. I mean, Greek dance was